Thank you. Welcome, Minister. The Commission of Inquiry on Mother and Baby Homes was established to provide a full account as to what happened to women and children across named mother and baby homes and 4 county homes between 1922 and 1998. The personal experiences that I have seen, heard and read thus far have been undoubtedly harrowing, and at no point in the remarks or in any of our remarks in this House should we lose sight of the absolute suffering of women and children for their lifelong experience and the lifelong state of not knowing and of abuse and hardship, and also of those who didn't make it to life long, whose remains were treated so despicably and so appallingly. The interim reports, particularly interim report 5, really indicates an Ireland that is harsh and judgmental, where there was no compassion. And while the focus on the investigation is rightly on the actions of the institution themselves, as a society we either expressly or otherwise, and I appreciate the complexity of that otherwise, we colluded to condemn women and children to lifelong suffering and torment, and not knowing their mothers and the circumstances of their separation from them. For mothers, the unspeakable pain of not knowing what happened to their child. In many instances, the mother and child were condemned to lifelong abuse and hardship and slavery. It is our shameful history, and when the report comes out, I have no doubt we will recoil in the horror of it. And our state stood by, and our people stood by, and were involved in the infliction of terrible pain. Just to remind ourselves of what this commission set out to do, it was to establish the circumstances and arrangements surrounding single women in these institutions and all of the relevant decisions and their agency within those decisions, to look at their living arrangements and care arrangements, to examine mortality rates as compared to the national norm, to investigate whether these were compliant with regulatory and ethical standards of vaccine trials. How did children become residents without their parents? How did they leave the care of their parents and their mothers? What was their child welfare measures, and how did those women make their decisions? The lack of full, free and informed consent. And then also within this, the systemic treatment of people on the basis of their religion, race, membership of the travelling community or disability. I fully support that we need a national memorial and archive in Sheriff Street. I'm fully behind the Sheriff Street proposals. But right now we're about this commission, and in order to get individuals to come forward within this commission and state with clarity their experiences and everything that surrounded that experience and led up to what happened in their lives, they were assured confidentiality. And the terms of reference particularly set out that the commission was not set up to establish an account of individual cases in such manner that would intervene or assist an individual to resolve their identity or trace their birth relative. In fact, their website very clearly in the frequently asked questions says, will the Commission help people who are adopted from these institutions trace their identity and birth relatives? And the answer is no. The Commission has no role in resolving identity and tracing relatives. And then they refer individuals inquiring there to TUSLA and the Adoption Authority. The final report at the end of this month will cease, and you say, the dissolution of the Commission. And at that moment, a decision needs to be made with regard to the records and the database that was comprised in the course of the Commission. Without this bill, those records can't be transferred unless redacted.
Gentlemen.
If redacted, they will be of no use or assistance to anyone attempting to access the valuable information within the database itself created by the Commission during the course of its work. The law here is to, as it stands at the moment, will not allow that unredacted transfer, and this piece of legislation is about dealing with that. The Commission was established under the Commissions of Investigation Act of 2004, sponsored by your good self, Senator. And that Act predates this Commission by 11 years. It predates the bill of today by 16 years. The establishment of that Commission occurred, and its powers flow from that Act. The treatment of evidence and reference is prescribed by that Act, and the implications of the records being sealed for 30 years were provided for in that Act. And with well thought out and good reason, that the Commission was established. We can't turn back time, we can't change the law. The evidence that has been given and the records created through the lens of the provisions of that Act cannot suddenly have those legislative conditions removed. To do so would render any future Commission of Inquiry untrustworthy and impotent were the rules to suddenly be changed after the fact. I disagree with Senator McDowell on the issue of that it tears up the confidentiality. I believe that it moves to secure, and I believe that your intentions, Minister, in future, what I've heard you talk about in future legislation regarding this, will address any anomalies or anything that arises. The evidence was heard in private and in confidence, and confidentiality still applies. We're receiving thousands. I think I've had over 4,000 emails at this stage from people who are absolutely hurting in a lot of instances, and others who no doubt are well-intentioned and wanting to be support. But what they call for is not addressed by today's bill. The wrong that they claim is being perpetrated is neither being perpetrated by this bill or exacerbated by this bill. Those whom we did not receive an email from, those are the contributors who want to remain anonymous, who have participated on the condition that their evidence was kept confidential and that their confidentiality is not addressed. It has been provided for in the 2004 Act. I believe you, Minister. I believe in your sincerity with regard to addressing how people are assisted in tracing their identity and their birth, their relatives. I believe you in your intentions. I believe you that you will set up an authority. I believe you in that there will be a national archive. Today's bill is about the database of the Commission. It seeks to preserve that invaluable database, not to put it beyond reach, but to preserve it. It places it in the care of TUSLA, and while I question that, the more I've read, the more I've gone into that since your very fine briefing the other day, I believe that TUSLA, for the time being, are the correct recipient of that. The law as it currently stands prohibits access and disclosure by the Department, and the bill cannot amend that, nor should it. The bill is about the preservation of the database, and I commend it to this House.